Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today I want to talk a little bit about the theming of Hexplore It Volume 4, the domain of Mirza Noctis, and how good the theming is. One thing I can say positively about Volume 3 of Hexplore It, the Sands of Shurax, is that it did a really good job of incorporating its setting into its theme and developing the two to create a cohesive world. And I think Sands of Shurax did that better than Valley of the Dead King and Forests of Adramon. While the theming of both of those games is pretty good, it's strong, it's a little generic. Both of those games kind of take place just in your kind of generic fantasy forest land. But Sands of Shurax really upped the ante as far as theming and setting goes, and it capitalized on that desert theme in ways that impacted the game and made you feel like you were playing in a desert environment. And so that is one positive thing that I really do like about the game. And I think that Mirza Noctis does this in a similar way, or it does it as well as Sands of Shurax, but maybe in a different way. The setting of this game in this kind of like, the land looks kind of purplish. I think it's because it's supposed to be kind of in flux between day and night, between like the gloaming and between sunset and sunrise, magic hour and the gloaming, that kind of thing. And so I think this world looks like this because it's captured in a specific time, but where this game is really devoted to its theme is in the like the theming of blood, and how blood is such an important part of the game, and it is the driving force of kind of everything in the game, and it really does inform this kind of horror theme that Mirza Noctis has. In that way, it does remind me a lot of Bloodborne, which was another game that I could have mentioned in the last video, alongside Castlevania and Diablo. And so one thing that is cool, so the main villain, Mirza Noctis, he's kind of like he's a vampire, and vampires in vampire fiction, they are not out about in the world very much. They kind of stay holed up in their fortress. And so in this game, Mirza Noctis is basically residing in his castle for most of the game. And he sends his henchmen out to do his bidding and to gather his blood in order for him to grow in power. And so in that sense, you don't see Mirza Noctis out on the board like you do the other volumes of Hexplore It, but his presence is felt by these collectors. And he sends these collectors out to the various villages represented by these red D6. Again, another red. These guys are collecting blood, so they are represented by red D3, I should say. And each of the collectors has a certain set of powers, and they go to the villages and they soak up blood. And they soak up blood so that Mirza Noctis can grow his blood pool and become stronger. So by the time he reaches 100 blood, he becomes this kind of like ascended super version of himself, and he becomes much harder to face off against. But I like how you never really directly interface with the main villain of this game until it is time for that final confrontation. I think that goes a long way in establishing his dreadful presence over the world without having to just have him on the map at all times. I really do like that. I also like how two of the main locations you will be interacting with are crypts and monasteries. And I think this is really cool. And I think they did a great job of kind of developing the backstory of the people who are at these monasteries, and they're concerned with how the blood is being used in the same way that the blood is being used at the crypts, and how you can turn in your rune stones for different types of abilities at the monastery or at the crypt. You know, the crypt is more tightly aligned with Mirza Noctis. And so as you feed your runes to the crypt, you are going to be getting access to harmful but powerful blood magic. And if you feed your runes to the monastery, you will be blessed with graces, and you will get powers that can help you destroy the impacts of the blood. So again, another really tightly woven thematic quality there. And also the way that the night deck and the day deck work. You know, you have to determine if you're going to be adventuring during the night or during the day, and then that will determine whether or not you are finding clues for the things that happen at night or clues for the things that are happening during the day. And the things in the day deck and the night deck are super thematic. You can find things like unmarked graves. And I thought this was really cool. So if you uncover an unmarked grave and you roll a 1, then your character gets diseased. And when they cure that condition, they actually become a vampire, a zombie, or a lichen, and they change their greater aspect to become a different kind of creature. That is super cool. And then we have the living card, the whole quest line of bloodlines. And so this is going to have a whole quest that transpires that all has to do with blood. We have the Deadlands, and I think the thematic writing in Hexplore It is really good, and it's something that doesn't get talked about enough. But like this says, you spot amongst the plentiful flora a soul flower, its essence drained from it, leaving it decaying and crumbly. Consuming the land's life force requires talent and discipline only defilists possess. The remnants of a brutal draining spell abound in the hollowed trees nearby. The ash floating in the air almost invigorates you. That's really good writing. This game creates, every time you play a game of Hexplore, and I think especially this volume, you get a real sense of the world. You get a sense of the machinations that are going on behind the scenes. You get a sense of the history of the world. And a lot of that is because of the thematic writing. It's so strong. Here's an investigation called Black Wedding. It says, you locate the site of a binding ritual, long dead yet elegant. Floral decorations line a path to a raised altar. Rows of benches remain, and skeletons are scattered everywhere. All that remains near the altar are black garments and a torn parchment containing strange patterns. That's really evocative, and it just makes you want to think, makes me want to, just exercise my imagination in order to come up with things that those cryptic runes might be holding. But even the treasure is very thematic. Like I recently just found this amulet of the Blood Dawn. So again, the use of blood as an overarching theme, as an overriding theme. I also found, what did I find? Where's that? Oh, the monocle. So as you guys know, if you're paying attention to this game, there are 3 colors associated with the runes in this game, or 3 major colors: red, green, and blue. And this monocle that you could find actually has lenses of red, green, and blue. And once per game turn, you can choose which lens to look through, and that gives you different bonuses depending on which lens you select. In this day deck here, we have the Cult of Blood. Parchment is pinned to a tree with an iron nail. It is a recruitment effort for Noctis. It doesn't take long to locate the cult's deserted hideout. They are gone. The fire is nothing but ashes, and the ground is trampled from former activities, I should say. Remnants of ceremonial candles encircle a strange symbol carved into the outcropping. Yeah, it's just each of these decks is absolutely overflowing with this kind of theme, and this very detailed writing that conveys a lot, but doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not, it does a lot with a little. This game is built upon, it's kind of, it's kind of a dichotomy here. It's like built upon an abundance of brevity, if that makes sense. It's built upon little pieces, but when you combine all of these little pieces together, you get a real sense of a grand and epic place and environment, and a grand and epic adventure. Even the way that the enemies are themed, these kind of like horror themed enemies, and how they interact with the world, and some of the legendary items that you can get from these enemies. And I like that Malekith here, he's the boss of the dungeon, so he's just like waiting down in the dungeons for you to maybe discover him. But we have like the graveyard golem, and there's the Lycan, a werewolf, and a monster from the deep, the Cardinal Coven or Coven. I'm always going to say Coven just because of, I've said it before, but just because of that movie, American movie. Yeah, if you haven't seen American movie, track it down. But yeah, I don't know. There's a really strong sense of theme in this. It does a good job of incorporating its theme of blood, its theme of like blood transfusion, of blood harvesting, and using that. It uses it wisely to create a strong horror theme. And I do get kind of a little bit spooked out playing this game and just thinking about like, oh man, this world is kind of gross and grimy, and it's not a world that it's a world I'm interested in, but it is also a very dangerous world. And I think that that does convey a different kind of feeling in this game than in Sands, or not in Force of the Dead, or Force of Adramon and Valley of the Dead King. And I think this one does. Sands of Shirax probably does a little bit of a better job of incorporating its setting into its theme and combining the two into the mechanisms of the game. Because that is one thing that Sands of Shirax does incredibly well. But I would say this is kind of like second in line to Sands of Shirax and how it does that. It doesn't quite, I don't know. Sands of Shirax, I think, maybe has a little bit of an easier job because of its desert theme, and you can have those caravans and the wide open nature of the desert, of the dunes. So it lends itself a little more to a stronger setting. But this game does it in its horror theming and its incorporation of blood and crypts and monasteries and monsters and all of that kind of stuff. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.